Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm here today to talk about a Pokemon that I have actually featured before, if those of you are uh, still around from my Electabuzz video. You might have seen a Donphan on that team, but I decided that Donphan kind of deserves its own video at some point, right? And I mean, I'm just excited to do it now. Donphan has been one of those Pokemon that I've been itching to play again, and I'm glad that I found a team that I think fits the Donphan pretty well. So, in any case, we're going to get into that. So, the viability rankings. As you can see, Donphan is not given very much love on the viability rankings at all. In fact, it is at the very bottom of E tier at 56th. And I just have to ask you guys, is there any Pokemon on this list that you would put Donphan ahead of? I mean, I'll be honest. I've reviewed some of these Pokemon. I do think it's better than Steelix. I've not reviewed Miltank. I think it's better than Miltank. I don't know if I'd say it's better than Umbreon or Armaldo. And I have not tried Houndoom, Camerupt, or Slacking. I might put all of those ahead of the three that I haven't tried yet, but I'm not sure. Maybe I should play with them before I make such a statement. But I do think that Donphan is probably, like, underrated here. And I sort of get the reason why. We'll explain part of what I think it is as we go along, but in any case... let me know if you think that Donphan should be, like, maybe number 30. That would be crazy. D-tier Donphan, that's crazy. So, the importance of being a rock resist. Has anybody read that play? Is it a play? I think it's a play. The importance of being earnest. So, quite a good one, a good read if you have not read it yet. Taught me a lot about how to interact with people. Probably not in a good way, very avoidant, but you'll know a Bunbury when you see one. In any case, Rock Slide is one of the most annoying moves in the format due to the 30% flinch chance that it has. So, yeah, and it's also one of the most commonly used moves. All the rock types love it, and all the Pokemon that run Earthquake as coverage are thinking about using Rock Slide as well because it has such complementary coverage with ground types. So it's not just Pokemon like Tyranitar and Aerodactyl, but those are the two scariest ones. But even Pokemon like Salamence and Metagross can be really, really challenging to deal with when they have Rock Slide. As such, it is really important that a lot of teams have a rock resist on them. Now, I'm not going to tell you that literally every team needs a rock resist, otherwise you have a bad team, but I'm going to say that a rock resist would improve every team. Or I should say, at the very least, it's something you want to have on your team if you can help it. So here are the rock resists. They're all ground types here. Swampert, Claydol, Flygon, and Donphan. Let's compare their HP and their defense to see how good they are at tanking rock-type moves, and we'll just throw them all on the board there. So, this is a lot of information, but what I'm telling you here is with 90 HP and 120 defense, Donphan is the sturdiest of all of these. Flygon is probably the least sturdy with the 80-80 across the board. Claydol is a little bit suspect because it has such a low HP stat, but because its base defense is pretty high, you can kind of get away with having a lower HP. Just put all your EVs into HP, and then you can let your nature be in defense if you would like. I just smacked my microphone. I hope that doesn't come up. In any case, Swampert is also very sturdy as well with the 100 base HP and the 90 defense. Still not quite as good as the 120 defense from Donphan, but still pretty good. And I know that you're going to look at this and say, well, I'm forgetting a lot of rock resist. And yeah, there are steel types. And yes, they are all relatively good rock resists, though they all have one issue. Like, as steel types, and that is that they're weak to ground. And almost every, like I said, almost every Pokemon that's using Rock Slide is going to have a ground type move. And if they don't, they probably have a fire type move. And all of these Pokemon are going to take super effective damage from that. Now, is that a reason to not use your steel type as a rock resist? Absolutely not. They're like Jirachi, yeah, it's weak to Earthquake, but it's could still maybe live 2 or 3. Oh, okay, maybe not 3, but it might live 2. So, like, don't count it out. It can still do a lot of good work for you. Same with Metagross. Same with, Registeel. You just can't kill that thing. Actually, not true, but it is really ridiculously hard to kill. And then Steelix I want to shout out as well because it's a quad rock resist, which is really, really interesting. Not very many Pokemon have that going for them. But unfortunately, you also have a ground weakness. Though, like, if you've watched my Steelix video, you'll know that Steelix actually has a ridiculous defense stat and can live a lot of Earthquakes. Sometimes it's in 3-hit KO range rather than 2-hit KO range from them as well. So that's quite nice. But let's talk about these ground types or rock resists a little further. And I guess I should also mention, yes, I know that the fighting type resists rock as well, but none of the fighting types are really that sturdy into rock, save for maybe Hariyama, maybe Machamp. But even then, those Pokemon are a little bit less resilient, mostly because they're taking Sandstorm damage. What you'll notice about all the other rock resists that I mentioned, because they're either ground or steel type, they're not taking sand chips. So, yes, I want to acknowledge that fighting types exist, but they're not typically the best at being rock resist because of their sand weakness. Now, as for these ground types, and the other thing that we care about with them is their attack stat. Their speed, maybe a little bit, but not really. The base attack is important, though, because you have the strongest move in the game, pretty much. Well, not the strongest move in the game, but one of the strongest low drawback moves in the game, which is Earthquake. 100 base power, 100 accuracy. Anything that has higher base power than Earthquake either does not have as good accuracy, or it has some sort of other drawback like recoil damage. So, in any case, of these Pokemon, Donphan surprisingly has the highest attack stat at 120. What that means is that with 0 attack investment, you'll deal 58% minimum to a 252 HP Tyranitar. That's incredible. Because even if the Tyranitar for some reason is packing Protect, it's not going to be able to live 2 Earthquakes from Donphan through even with its leftovers. So that's pretty good. And Donphan, of course, is probably going to invest a little bit in this attack stat. So it could get even worse for the Tyranitar there. Now, I have checked, and without an Adamant Donphan or like a Choice Band, you're not really going to OHKO Tyranitar. I think you have rolls to do it if you're not Adamant and the Tyranitar has no HP investment. But yeah, I mean, you can obviously play around with that at your own pace. But this is just to highlight just how high Donphan's attack is. Swampert does not quite get there with its Earthquake at 0 attack investment. Tyranitar has chances to live a second one after its leftovers, and then Flygon and Claydol, of course, are on the other end. Claydol, in fact, needs like an Adamant nature to ensure that it gets the 2-hit KO on a 252 HP Tyranitar, which is not a great look for Claydol, but that's okay. Let's talk about some of their other helpful defensive tools, mostly their abilities and their moves. But yeah, you'll see the 2 in the middle, Claydol and Flygon, have ground immunities, which can be helpful for dealing with these rock-type spammers, because they're, again, very commonly going to have Earthquake as a coverage move. So you can switch into them going for an Earthquake as well. It just gives you more opportunities to get your rock resist in on them. Now, I will say that the 2 of them in the middle here are the most susceptible to like a neutral coverage option, like say Hidden Power Bug or Double Edge, and definitely the case for Claydol, who's weak to Hidden Power Bug. But yeah, and then Flygon having the ×4 weakness to Ice means that if, say, Tyranitar is packing Ice Beam as a 4th move, not impossible, then it could deal with Flygon pretty easily with that. So there's a little bit of negative qualities going into these two, but Claydol at least has Refresh and Rapid Spin to make up for it. Rapid Spin's really nice for removing hazards. Now, Claydol doesn't really need to remove hazards for itself, but it is really good at removing them for teammates, which makes all of your other teammates better into the rock-type attackers that you're thinking about. So say, like, for example, you have a Milotic. Yeah, Milotic's not a rock resist per se, but it doesn't take too much damage from physical attacks, and it can take maybe an extra hit if it doesn't have to deal with spikes damage. So that's important to note. And the same thing can be said for, of course, Donphan, who also has Rapid Spin, though a little bit of minus points because Donphan will take spikes damage. So take that into consideration. Roar is really important, and you'll see that on the outer 2 Pokemon, Swampert and Donphan. That can be really good at stopping, say, Tyranitar from Dragon Dancing up in your face. It could also be really good at shutting down a substitute Lychee Berry Aerodactyl. You let them sub down to their Lychee Berry and roar them on the turn that they do so, in which case they're completely neutralized. And you probably don't even need your Donphan or your Swampert to be the dedicated Aerodactyl check anymore, because, well, Aerodactyl's 105 attack is pretty nice when supported with a Choice Band, but not so nice otherwise. So yeah, I want to note as well that Swampert is a water type. What does that mean? It doesn't make you any better at walling rock per se. It does make you a little bit better at hitting rock types because you have the water stab, and you know, if you have, say, Hydro Pump and you're up against a Pokemon with high defense, low attack, say like, or low special attack, special defense, geez, I'll get there eventually, say like Regirock, for example, then you can hit the Regirock for a lot more damage than the other grounded or ground type Pokemon. But water type is really good because it helps you beat Metagross, who is kind of I would say like a pseudo rock type. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, unsubstantiated or uncontextualized, and I probably need to explain myself, but I'm not going to do that, so we're going to move on. In any case, Rapid Spin users. So you've probably seen this slide before if you watched my Armaldo video, but just briefly going over this. Taking a look at the defensive qualities of the main Rapid Spinners here. I know Fortress is there too, but I don't know. We're just pushing a Fortress hate agenda right now, so let's forget about it. But in any case, of all these Pokemon, of course, Donphan is the best physically, defensively. Now, yes, Cloyster does have the phenomenal 180 defense stat, but 50 HP is a pretty sizable hit. I do think that Cloyster is a little, I mean, it's probably a bit better at taking physical hits, but like it also has it's weak to sand and has, like, you know, a pace. It plays at a pace that doesn't allow it to be the sort of physical wall. And obviously its defensive type is not quite as good, being weak to fighting and rock. Like, you're not necessarily a wall to most physical attackers in that sort of sense. Now, against something like a Snorlax, for example, which might not have a super effective move to hit you, then of course you're a great wall. But Donphan is going to be a little bit better in general against physical attackers because they won't have a coverage move that hits Donphan, at least not a physical coverage move. That's kind of the interesting thing about ground type. You know, it's only weak to special attacks. Kind of the same idea that we think of it with water type being only weak to special attacks as well. It's kind of strange. In any case, as far as special defense goes, Donphan's actually not like completely terrible, but it is not great. 60 SPDF is not the ideal place to be. Even something like a Armaldo has more special defense than you. Now, because of Donphan's higher HP, it's kind of offsets that. But like compared to Starmie, for example, you're actually going to be a better special wall with Starmie than you would with Donphan, which is not ideal. Now, I guess maybe things get a little bit different if you invest a lot of EVs into the special defense of Donphan, but I don't know. I feel like Donphan is almost a lost cause, especially defensively. Like it might be good to look to avoid a certain OHKO, maybe by like a water type move, but like I don't know if I would do much more than that with Donphan on the special defense side. There's no assault vest to really help us out here in this generation. Could be kind of interesting though if there was. Donphan would love that. In any case, these are the rapid spinners, and I think what you're gonna notice, if you're ever trying to guess where I'm going next, is that Claydol and Donphan have been kind of talked about a lot in this presentation so far, and that's not an accident. Claydol and Donphan are kind of locked in a little bit of a debate. The debate has kind of passed us, and a winner has kind of already been decided, as you could probably guess by who is OU and who is UUBL. But let's talk about the similarities and maybe some of the differences between Claydol and Donphan here. Of course, they're both ground types, right? Of course, they're both defensive in nature, or at least they have mostly defensive capabilities. But let's talk about some of their, I guess, more of their differences here. So Claydol is going to have a much higher special defense stat, 120 instead of a 60 from Donphan. That's pretty notable. Claydol, even with just a plus SPDF nature, is actually really good at walling a lot of things, particularly things like your electric types who, yes, are using a super effective hidden power, but because it's non-stab and only 70 base power, Claydol kind of shrugs that off. Claydol, of course, is ground immunity, which is important because it means your Spike's immune, it means your Dugtrio immune. Now, granted, Donphan's not really that scared of Dugtrio. Like, Dugtrio has to chip the Donphan, or the Donphan has to get chipped really low before Dugtrio even has a successful trap against it, but it's good to keep in mind. And then, as far as being spinners is concerned, Claydol does have a really solid argument for being one of the best spinners because it has a burn resistant stab that it can hit Gengar with. Now, like, that's not to say that Donphan gets no coverage, right? Donphan could run Hidden Power Ghost like pretty easily, but it's not stab, and if you get burned, well, then all of a sudden Donphan's not really that good at hitting a Gengar, whereas Claydol doesn't necessarily care about getting burned in regards to hitting Gengar. You can hit it just fine with Psychic, and you don't need very much special defense investment to secure a 2-hit KO versus the Gengar either, so that's really nice. And then Refresh is also just nice to have for the slower paced teams that value getting rid of status on the Claydol. They're going to need Claydol to do a couple things for them, not just spin once and boom. And I guess I should mention that as well, is that Claydol has boom, which is really, really helpful for taking out boosters. But Donphan is not completely helpless in that regard. First of all, it's got higher... it has higher stats in pretty much all the other stats that matter. Yeah, I mean, its special attack, of course, is not very good, but, I mean, it doesn't really matter that much. You're a primary physical attacker anyway. And when you have a physical attack of 120, like, who cares? But higher HP, higher defense, and higher attack, which is all really, really nice. And then I talked about Explosion being good against boosters, but Roar is also really good against boosters, and Donphan gets that, so you have some options there. I think that because Claydol is better into the main spin blocker and has ground immunity, I think that pushes Claydol over the edge. It also helps that Claydol has good special defense. It means that Claydol can work as a tank to many things, like to Zapdos, like to Jolteon, like to Magneton, as well as your Tyranitar, your Aerodactyl, your Flygon, etc. Whereas Donphan is going to be more limited to just taking on the physical attackers of those, because its special defense is kind of lacking. It's only 60, of course. Speed, yes, Claydol is a little bit faster. I mean, Donphan is pretty slow. It's not going to outspeed most things. Whereas Claydol will outspeed some things, like an uninvested Tyranitar or Blissey or something like that. But I think that that's kind of a weak, like, pro in favor of Claydol. I don't think it really matters that much that Claydol is faster in that sense. Now, if we were talking, like, if Claydol was, like, base 90, of course that would matter, right? Like, being consistently faster than Metagross and stuff like that could matter a lot as a ground type. But yes, while you are naturally faster than something like Metagross with Claydol, it's got base 75. Like, you're almost never going to invest in it because you're so incentivized to invest in your other stats. Really, it just feels like it's like a cool happenstance that you happen to be that fast. Although I will say, being faster than an uninvested Tyranitar with a minus speed nature on your Claydol is pretty nice. Don't hate that. So, yeah. The debate is kind of over. You guys can have the debate again in the comments below, but I mean, I'm just going to say, I think Claydol is better in many cases, but, like, these stats notwithstanding, like, that's non-negligible, and there can be cases for Donphan over Claydol, and I think I'm going to try to make a case for it here with the team that I'm about to show. But first, let's talk about Smogon's sets for Donphan. So, the first one is the Choice Band set, and I'll tell you this, if you look at these EVs and you see any of them not being a multiple of 4, I don't know if that's the case on this one, but that's a sign that this is like a really old set. So keep that in mind. And I do think that a lot of these Donphan sets are old. Like, if you go and look at the write-ups on them, they're talking about, like, how Donphan does something like Regice, which is not super relevant a matchup anymore. But I do think that Donphan and Regice both saw a lot of play in early ADVs, so keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind that we don't see a lot of play from them in modern ADV, and there are reasons for that. But yes, this set, Earthquake, Rock Slide, Hidden Power, Bug or Ghost, and Rapid Spin. I mean, you're essentially like every physical attacker that runs a Choice Band, pretty much. This set is useful for multiple reasons. The first is that as long as your opponent packs a Ghost, such as Dusclops or Gengar, Donphan won't be able to Rapid Spin. With a Choice Band, however, you can 2-hit KO Dusclops with Earthquake and Gengar with Rock Slide. It's kind of interesting. It kind of means that you don't necessarily have to run Hidden Power Ghost, but Donphan, being lacking in the special resistance side, is going to sort of neglect its special defense with this set, and instead is going to opt to run a sort of hit and run play style. Interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that for Donphan. You can OHKO Celebi with Hidden Power Bug, 2-hit KO Bulky Waters with Earthquake, and Hidden Power Ghost can sometimes be used to OHKO Gengar. Alright, interesting. I actually didn't read all of this before I put it in the slide, but this is good to know. I do think that some of this stuff is dated, of course, like the Dusclops calcs are probably not all that relevant in today's metagame. You don't see a lot of Dusclops. Not to say it's never seen, but it's obviously not quite as popular as Gengar. And yeah, I also want to mention, you'll keep seeing this 24 speed. We'll actually see it on the next slide as well. This is to outspeed like a minus speed nature Swampert. I don't know what the obsession with that is. Well, I guess we'll mention it more on the next slide. With this one, it kind of makes sense because you have at least a pretty strong Earthquake, but I don't know how relevant that speed is. But I'm sure that this is a pretty solid amount of attack and all that. Probably really good at dueling against, say, like a Tyranitar or a Metagross. So keep this in mind. But I'm just going to keep it a buck. I don't think that Choice Band is quite where Donphan's best utility lies. I think that there are a lot of other Choice Banders that you could use. Now, yes, Donphan's got a 120 attack stat. Not very many Pokemon have a higher attack than that. But Donphan is also really slow and really easy to switch in on, especially in Force Out, in particular if you have a strong special attacker. Whereas I think that there's some other CBers that are not quite as easily forced out. Take like your Metagross, even Regirock, and they also have Boom to be really, really scary to Pokemon that would otherwise switch into their moves. So Donphan does not have that, so keep that in mind as well. We'll go on to this set, the Tank, or basically a defensive Donphan. So, yeah, we got some crazy EVs here. But the sort of concept behind this, or at least what the write-up says, is you'll generally want to maximize Donphan's HP and invest fairly equal into its attack and defense. I don't know why it needs to be equal per se, but okay. 24 speed allows you to outspeed a relaxed Swampert, but if you aren't worried about it, you can dump the EVs into attack or defense instead. And yeah, I'll have my bone to pick with this in a moment, but I'll talk a little bit about this set. So Earthquake, Hidden Power, Rock. I mean, that makes sense. We don't have Rock Slide here. You can certainly run Rock Slide, but the reason why you run Hidden Power Rock is because it doesn't miss. And since Donphan is so slow, you're generally not getting to benefit from the flinch chance of Rock Slide. So, like, Hidden Power Rock is generally going to do better for you in the long run. Now, it does mean that you can't have a different Hidden Power, and sometimes it might make some sense to try to run a different Hidden Power. I think Hidden Power Ghost, especially on this lower attack investment Donphan set, could make some sense, and I have, played around with it a little bit. And in that case, you're going to need Rock Slide instead, but you could go that route. And then Rapid Spin, Roar. I would just say this: if you're going to drop Rapid Spin on Donphan for Roar, I think you'd just be better off using Swampert with Roar. Now, it's possible that you might already have Swampert on your team, and you're having Donphan to be like a second Rock Resist, that's crazy. if you encounter Rock Spam and you lose, like, I don't know what to say. But in any case, yeah, I would not opt to go with Roar over Rapid Spin. I could see an argument for Roar over Rest. Rest is really nice for Donphan. It does help it a lot in endgames, especially if you're like in an endgame against an Aerodactyl or something. And like Aerodactyl sweeping through the rest of your team. and rest gives you a lot more longevity. It makes you really, really resilient to multiple rock slide flinches. Because if you can get back to full HP, I mean, like, Aerodactyl's going to need an ungodly amount of flinches to beat the Donphan. So, in any case, I think that Donphan is pretty nice for this sort of set here with the high defense, high HP. But yeah, I don't understand this with the speed. I did some calcs. This set with this attack investment, impish. I mean, I admit it's going to do 10% more. So with this sort of set with impish, you're going to be doing 26 to 37% to a defensive Swampert, and defensive Swampert runs like no special attack investment, right? But its Hydro Pump is still about a 37% chance to OHKO this Donphan outright. So I don't really think it's all that worth it to invest in speed. Now, if you're adamant, maybe it makes a little bit more sense. You'll be doing closer to 34% on the high end. You might be able to finish off a Swampert in 2 shots or something like that. But even then, like, you can't, because if the Swampert's in torrent range, it's simply just going to kill you with Hydro Pump. So, like, I don't know. To me, like, it's not worth it to even have this speed. I would just forget about it. I mean, I could see. Okay, I think a part of the write-up, I don't know if it was on this or if it was somewhere else, but suggesting that you should run this amount of speed on Donphan so that you can outspeed Regice. But, like, I don't know, Regice is just not that relevant a Pokemon anymore that I would need to consider its speed. Plus, when Regice gets used, it's so commonly going to be a minus speed nature anyway, and as long as you're not minus speed on your Donphan, you should outspeed a minus speed Regice. So I wouldn't really bother so much with that. So yeah, I would just stick this into mostly the attack, and that's exactly what I'm about to show you here. So this is my sort of update to the set. So I took 8 EVs from defense, or not, sorry, 4 EVs from defense, and all the speed investment and put it into attack. And the reason being is that it helps us to get some OHKO, or 2-hit KOs, I should say, on some of these steel types, particularly the bulky attacker Metagross set. So through leftovers and protect, we should 2-hit KO the Metagross. I think maybe technically if you like low roll both times and it gets a protect off, then Metagross might be able to survive, but like it's virtually, like it's a virtual impossibility. You're gonna be out damaging the Metagross's healing by a lot, so yeah, that's pretty good. You will also 2-hit KO defensive Jirachi unless they're running more than 280 raw defense, and that raw defense meaning like their literal stat, not the EV investment. Of course, you can't invest 280, but this is not super common. Defensive Jirachi, like most of the time, Jirachi is gonna run plus Spadef nature if it's the defensive like Body Slam Fire Punch Jirachi. Though there is a CM Wish Jirachi, I believe, that runs a bold nature. In that case, you don't quite 2-hit KO that Jirachi, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But that's virtually the only Jirachi you won't. Though, of course, people homebrew Jirachis all the time, so I'm a big proponent of that, in fact. But also, I want to note that you have an 81% chance to one-shot a 4 HP Tyranitar after 3 layers of spikes. Now, that's a little bit disappointing. You would hope that on a Pokemon this strong with a stab or super effective Earthquake would just OHKO Tyranitar, like, and that would be great if we lived in that world, but we just don't quite live in that world. So we're gonna have to settle for our like 70% damage minimum. Well, I mean, probably more like like 68, 69%. I don't know. Hidden Power Rock. So this has got an 18% chance to Oko Moltres. It's favored to get the kill in sand. I think it's like 56%. This is maybe an argument for why you might want to run Rock Slide instead, because Rock Slide will get a little bit of extra damage. In fact, I'm going to do a little calc here. Calc is slang for calculator, in case you're not familiar with that. It's a stupid joke. I don't even really get it, but so Moltres, and if we had Rock Slide instead, we would be doing about 92% minimum. So a 50-50 to Oko outside of sand, and with sand involved, it is. I hate that the calculator doesn't like give you the sand calc if the opponent has leftovers. Like I feel like we need to get past that. You're at an 87.5% chance to just straight up Oko with Rock Slide in the sand. So that's good to know. Maybe that has persuaded you that you're gonna run this set with Rock Slide and get a little bit more attack investment so you can guarantee that you'll kill a Moltres if sand is up. But regardless, you're going to Oko Charizard. I mean, yes, technically Charizard could run enough HP investment to not get Oko'd, but it's also going to have to not run a minus defense nature, and I feel like every mixed Zard in the world would rather run minus defense than anything else. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to KO Charizard. Just trust on that. And also notably, we're going to 3-hit KO a Rest Zapdos through its leftovers. So that means that Rest Zapdos is going to be forced to Rest Loop to not die to Donphan's Hidden Power Rock. And even then, on the turn that it rests, it's going to get hit with the Hidden Power Rock. And then it gets hit with 2 more before it wakes up. So Donphan can beat a Rest Zapdos on its own, which is important because Rest Zapdos is the only Zapdos that's commonly not running hidden power coverage. So that's the one that can't hit Donphan. So good to know. The defensive investment, we're going to live 1 Spike plus Metagross Meteor Mash plus a +1 Metagross Meteor Mash. I know that's a little bit like insane to say, but this is important because say you're in against an Agility Metagross and they have a Spike down. Alright, you're taking that Spike's damage and the Metagross goes for Meteor Mash. If it gets a +1 boost, then it would kill most Pokemon in that situation. But Donphan can live it and it can get an Earthquake off. Now, in that sort of disaster scenario, you're probably not winning the 1v1 against Metagross, but at the very least, you will get the Earthquake damage off, which is going to be big, because it's going to do more than, like, upwards of 60%. So, a lot of other Pokemon, like your special attackers, could maybe finish the Metagross off in that case. So, good to know. An Adamant Double-Edged Tyranitar will not be able to 4-hit KO the Donphan through leftovers. That's insane. So that means, for example, if Tyranitar gets to +6, it gets 6 Dragon Dances off. It's not even gonna KO the Donphan with Double Edge. So, like, that's just incredible. And of course, Double Edge is the strongest move that Tyranitar gets to hit Donphan that's not a special attack. So, yeah, well, I guess, okay, Focus Punch, but, I mean, if you let a Tyranitar Focus Punch your Donphan, you kind of deserve to lose. Like, what are you doing? Just Earthquake. And then, Choice Banded Aerodactyl Double Edge is also a 4-hit KO. So, it's pretty good to know. That means that you can switch into a Double Edge and then 2-shot the Aerodactyl back with Hidden Power Rock and still have a Donphan left over. So that's really good. You're going to outspeed Fortress and a minus speed Regice naturally. There are a few other Pokemon like Snorlax, like, I don't know, Steelix. Yeah, like these really slow Pokemon that you'll outspeed, but otherwise, just assume that Donphan's going to be the slowest thing on the field. And yeah, now let's take a look at the team. Okay, so this team, I call it SkarmMagPhan. So there's kind of a concept of a team like a SkarmMagDoll, and Magdoll, just as an archetype, is somewhat popular. It's not as popular now as it used to be, but the trio of Skarmory, Magneton, and Claydol are used together to win the Spikes War. So the idea is that Skarm will spike, Magneton eliminates the opposing Skarmory or Spiker, and Claydol will come in and spin the spikes away, and now you are basically guaranteed to have won the Spikes War. Yeah, they can spin on you, but if they don't have a Magneton to eliminate your Skarmory, you can get your spikes back. So that's important. The idea is that we're going to use Donphan instead so that we can have a sturdier counter into Tyranitar and Aerodactyl. And what that does is it affords us the opportunity to run what I kind of call as a pseudo rock resist, which would be Milotic. Higher defense Pokemon that isn't hit for super effective damage by Tyranitar or Aerodactyl, but doesn't necessarily resist the Rock Slide. Forces them to go for Rock Slides. You can get a 2-hit KO on them as long as you don't get unlucky with flinches and crits. Then Milotic is still a decent answer to Tyranitar, but Donphan, of course, is your preferred. You're still going to want to have a Rock Resist on a Milotic team. A lot of times you'll see Claydol for that, but this time we're using Donphan, of course. Lead Celebi is going to Leech Seed Zapdos, and it scares Suicune, which is kind of good because, Zapdos we don't have a lot of great switch-ins to on this team. Celebi probably is the best one. And Lead Suicune is not going to be able to do too much to Celebi unless it crits Ice Beam. But we can get a Leech Seed off on the Suicune, and then we can switch to Milotic. We could switch to Skarmory. We can do a lot of things depending on what the Suicune has done. So that's good. And then also, Celebi is self-sufficient enough that it can switch back in and be a part of the mid and end game as well, which is good for a lead, I think. Sometimes people think of a lead as once we get out of the opening, essentially, I don't care about my lead anymore, but that's not always true. Sometimes you have a balanced pace team that wants all of its Pokemon to contribute at all phases of the game. And that's kind of true for this team. I would say maybe Magneton's a little bit more early game. Maybe Milotic is a little bit more mid-late game, but I digress. Milotic is going to give us some defensive support, particularly its special defense is naturally high, and that's really good for us. And it's going to be a more direct counter to Metagross, which allows Donphan to handle the rock types by itself. So that's kind of nice. Sometimes your rock resist has to pull double duty handling Metagross, and that's where a lot of rock spam teams overwhelm teams that only have, say, one rock resist. But while this team doesn't have multiple rock resists, well, I guess technically it does with Magneton, but Magneton kind of doesn't count because it's so frail. But this team can sort of get away with that. We can allow Milotic to be the dedicated Metagross check, which affords us the opportunity to not have to stake our whole Skarmory on it. It gives us room for Donphan to do other things. Donphan could still come in and be that check for the Metagross as well if we don't need it for the rock types. And then, of course, if Metagross ever gets a kill, then Magneton could be the follow-up, which could be nice. But sometimes we don't necessarily want to do that in case they have Dugtrio, and we need Magneton to do other things for us later in the game, maybe to check a Suicune, to counter a Skarmory, etc. So keep that in mind. Salamence is basically the win condition for this team. It's, of course, a DD Mence. And it appreciates Magneton removing opposing Skarmory, which is nice. Although, I will say, the Magneton set that we're running, it's not the most consistent at taking out Skarmory. And we'll see more what I mean in the replays. But that will be enough Crystal Cave for us. What a great song. I love Pokemon Mystery Dungeon soundtrack, as you are no doubt aware, if you've been watching this channel for more than 5 seconds. But we're going to continue on to the scene here. Oh, look at that Donphan up there. He's so awesome. And I figured that I'm going to play some Gen 2 music. I know that there is a remix of... I don't know if it's... I don't think it's this particular theme. But there's some remixes hidden in Fire Red from the Sevi Islands, and I'm trying to get nice extended versions of each of those on YouTube, and some of them I can't find. So I don't know if anybody can find, in particular, like I'm looking for like the first 3 islands, like extended themes on YouTube. Then let me know. But in any case, we're gonna roll with this, the Route 45 theme. I think this is where you catch Donphan. I might be mistaken, but let's pretend like it is. In any case, let's go on. A Nidoqueen lead, very strange. So I lead Celebi. That's got to be like one of the worst leads Nidoqueen could have seen all day. But in any case, very cool. Celebi is simply just gonna be annoying for this. Wow. Takes the HP Grass on the Starmie, and I don't quite kill because I have a pretty low special attack investment Celebi. But I will go for a Psychic as they switch to Umbreon, so they've just got a very strange team all in general. Wish path to the Starmie as I go for a Spike. It's pretty good. I sort of figured that it could be possible that they go Starmie, but it's not really worth me going for a Drill Peck into, say, if they have like a Magneton or some other Pokemon that doesn't really care about Drill Peck damage all that much. And if the Starmie is forced to go for Rapid Spin, then Celebi is very easily able to come in. So I can simply just stay in with the Celebi. Anticipating that they would switch to Umbreon, I'll go for Leech Seed. And then I can go back to Skarm and basically, like, sort of reset this loop. Except they go to Nidoqueen, who has already revealed Fire Blast, so it might have enough juice to take out my Skarm in 2 hits, but I have a whole Milotic to switch to. They may have an Electric move. It's possible. So I switched to Celebi. It covers that. It also covers a switch to Starmie. Keeps the Starmie from being able to spin the hazard freely. What my opponent decides to do is paralyze my Celebi and then loses the Starmie there. Which makes me think that they have something that they're going to do on follow-up to really punish my Celebi being in. And it is Tyranitar, but I have a whole Donphan here. And Donphan is just going to wall the Tyranitar and then make that play look not so great. So yeah. This Zapdos reveals to not have leftovers. That's interesting. Wondering if it's like Pataya Berry or something. In any case, passes to Umbreon, who I anticipate is just going to pass this speed boost along. But I am going to just take my damage. And this Umbreon is, with +2 speed, is still slower than my Magneton. And yeah. My opponent says, you guessed and it paid off, which kind of, I don't know how to take that. I don't know if that meant that my opponent thought, I don't know what my opponent thought. Maybe my opponent thought that they would be faster with their Umbreon at +2 because Magneton so commonly runs Modest, but I'm actually a timid Magneton. But they also said, you guessed and it paid off. Like, I don't know what they meant by that. Like, if they went to Nidoqueen, like, I have my whole Milotic. If they go to Tyranitar, on like my toxic turn, then I just take its Lumberry. If I T-Bolt into it, like, that's not good for Tyranitar either. Like, I mean, never mind. Like, I don't know exactly what they meant. They do go to Metagross on my Magneton, which is, like, that's hard telling me that they're going to go for Earthquake. So I can just go to Skarmory, who's plenty fine into this. They actually switch up their moves, go for Rock Slide, so they're not Choice Banded. That's good to know. And I can simply just set up all my spikes here. And yeah, this endgame is looking pretty much packed up, unless I get flinched out of my Skarmory here. They revealed that their Nidoqueen in the chat is max defense with counter EQ Roar and Fire Blast. Interesting. I don't know what their sort of concept is there, but eventually we get our third spike up, and I can roar the Vince McMash Sif out. And yeah, simply go back to Donphan. Like, I take that Earthquake very well. A +1 Earthquake from Tyranitar doing 35%. That's nothing. And then I don't really need my Donphan for anything else, so I'm going to sack it here. But I actually live a Hidden Power from this Zapdos, and I get some nice chip with the Hidden Power Rock. And because this Zapdos doesn't have leftovers, it can never Baton Pass. It's going to just eventually die to the sand. And yeah, Celebi is just in and going to take it out. In fact, it outspeeds. And yeah, we're pretty solid here. So I need to be careful not to lose to Metagross, but given that this Metagross doesn't have... It either has Boom as its last move, or it has Agility. I can kind of just do whatever. My Lodic would have been absolutely fine to go into, but I was deciding to go to Magneton. If they went for anything other than Agility, then I could have gotten some T-Bolt damage on them. If they went for Agility, okay, well then they're forced to kill my Magneton, then I get Milotic in, and then I just surf until it dies, and hopefully I don't get Flinch Crit out of existence. But yeah, that's kind of the game. They went for Explosion, ends off the game. I miss out on my 6-0, but whatever. It's really hard to 6-0 a Metagross that explodes. Oh my gosh, we're spoiling the rest of my... Okay, the rest of my stuff is good. We're going to continue. Alright, lead Skarm versus my lead Celebi. I'm just going to go straight to Magneton, who goes for Thunderbolt. And yeah, this is the sort of rub with my Magneton. So I don't know if you noticed in the last game, but it was a timid Magneton, and it had... it did not have Magnet. It has leftovers. So what that means is that, generally speaking, you will not kill Skarmory in one hit. Sometimes you will, because the Skarmory is running a lot of speed investment and neglecting to run Spadef investment for it. But whatever. It's also nice for catching like the yellow Skarms that run Adamant Nature, because I mean, you're just faster and you kill them with Thunderbolt, so that's kind of funny. But in any case, we are going to remove this Skarmory, and generally, like, Magneton teams don't like to have all these spikes up, but I can just go to my Donphan here as they go to Flygon and spin these hazards away, and Flygon is never going to break through my Donphan. The worst it can do is go for Toxic, but with that sort of damage, that actually looks to be an offensive Flygon, so... yeah, keep in mind that that is a highly attack-invested Flygon, too, doing that little to Donphan. It's also not doing very much to Milotic, to be fair. But I can just surf again. They reveal Magneton. I can go to Celebi, who is a pretty safe Magneton switch. And then they will go to Gyarados on a Psychic. Very nice. I can go to Skarmory here, and Roar is not so bad a click. If they go for Taunt, that could maybe be not good, but I guess going Skarmory, I'm kind of committed to doing that. If I was gonna play around Taunt, that would, I mean, then I should have just went hard to like say Donphan instead. Although Donphan, it is pretty tanky, but Gyarados, like +1 Gyarados can get through it in depending on what moves it has. If it has Double Edge, it probably could 2-hit KO my Donphan from 70%. So want to keep that in mind. And we may need the Donphan to do some other stuff for us later. This seems to be like a sort of Magneton Superman team, sort of. Guess it kind of makes sense because you have mostly physical attackers here, but like kind of antithetical to the idea of Superman. But I don't know, maybe this could be a play. Does not seem to be a taunt Gara, and I'm able to roar it out. I get flinched on my Milotic, or not flinched, crit on my Milotic, which is not good, as the Salamence is going to DD, and I'm going to take a Toxic on it, and I'm going to hope that it doesn't have Refresh. But I can go to my own Salamence, cycle and Intimidate, the Salamence, of course, unrevealed last battle, and then head into Skarmory. And I'm not so concerned with the Salamence now that it has a less attack stat. I'm going to go hard Magneton, anticipating them to go Magneton. The sort of idea is that I'm faster than all Modest Magneton, and all Timid Magneton will not be able to KO me with HP Fire. So, in fact, I think Modest Magneton is not able to OHKO me with HP Fire either, but I digress. My Magneton can go for a Toxic on the Blissey, gets a little bit of chip damage, forces it to switch. They're just going to T-Wave, and then Seismic Toss. Milotic can come in on that quite easily. Simply just recover. Milotic is, of course, going to be important for walling out this Salamence, as well as the Flygon. I am going to go for Surf, because it's like, why not? Just get some damage on Salamence. And they opt to go to Magneton and just sack it off there, which is not great. And then my opponent concedes the game. I think they maybe could have played it out a little bit more. Try to go for a Gyarados endgame, although it is a little bit tough. The combination of Salamence, Skarm, Donphan, it's really hard. If I land a Toxic, eventually this Gyarados is just cooked. And yeah, we just talk about the game here. Hyper Beam on Gyarados, I think is what they said that they were doing. That's kind of crazy. I hope it worked out for them, though. In any case, let's watch this game. This is against a player at 1693, very high on the ladder. I think I'm 1592. And I go for Thunderbolt, and I don't quite KO the Skarmory. In fact, it's actually not even a... I don't think it's a max Spadef Skarmory even. But in any case, I get roared out into my own Skarmory, and I'm going to go hard back to Magneton in case that their Skarmory wants to like do something, i.e. Spike again. But I actually end up catching their Magneton, and this is like exactly what this Magneton is built to do. Like, it trapped their Magneton and eliminated it. And now, against this Tyranitar, I withdraw and I reveal its Pursuit, which is whatever. I could have maybe went for a Toxic, that would have been nice, but I figured I have a decent switch against most Tyranitar here, so why don't I just go to the switch and save my Magneton sack? But yeah, this is probably the worst case scenario for the plays that I decided to make here. It is a Pursuit Tar with Hidden Power Grass. I mean, Ice Beam I guess would have been even worse, but yeah, that's not good. That does over 50% to Donphan, which is not what we like to see. I'm going to have to go to Milotic and Surf into a Celebi for negligible damage. I'm going to go to Salamence here. I can't really afford to let the Celebi Calm Mind if it is a Calm Mind Celebi. Interesting that we're both running basically Celebi, SkarmMag teams. But they have Swampert, of course, and Tyranitar, and Aerodactyl, which is, I think, the more standard-looking version of this type of team. And yeah, so I go for spikes with my Skarmory, and then I hard switch to Donphan to try to spin away these spikes here, or go for Hidden Power Rock and don't even do enough damage to the Skarmory. That earns me a Toxic on my Donphan, and yeah, the Skarmory's just going to stall my Donphan out now. So this was actually a really bad play, and this is what I want you to recognize with this team, is that Donphan is not good at spinning on Skarmory. It is good at spinning. It is not good at spinning on Skarmory, because it does not have moves to threaten Skarmory at all. That was my strongest move there, did 15%. And even if I'm rest to like get this HP back and remove this Toxic, like I'm just inviting Celebi or Swampert to switch in eventually. So like that's not good, and frankly that play did a lot of damage for me. It I think I was in a winning position, and now I think I'm in a losing position because of that. Or at the very least, it's even now. I go for Rock Slide into Swampert, which does basically nothing. I'm forced to switch to Celebi, who's going to take a Toxic. Not the worst case scenario, but not great for me. Eventually, I'm going to have to get my Skarmory in and set all the layers. Good to know, versus this team, there are no hazard removers. And in fact, that's probably, like, I'm going to trade hazards here. And this is what I should have done from the get-go. I should not have let Donphan get Toxic for the sake of trying to spin away one spike against Skarmory while it was still in. I should have just traded the spikes down and then started roaring, because I would have been in a much, much better situation. This Skarmory would have been a lot lower. I still would have had my Donphan potentially to spin these hazards away later. I get roared out. I'm going to have to recover here as I get Toxic. I'm going to just refresh that off. And then I'm going to get roared into Skarmory. And then I roar, drag out the Celebi. I get Leech Seeded. I'm going to have to roar just to get more damage on the Celebi. I find the Skarmory, which is not good. I'm just giving it more HP. It's getting back to... It basically just got back to full there, off of my Donphan play. I mean, it could... Yeah, it would have gotten some leftovers healing for sure against my Skarmory, but, like... We would have been fine here, I think. I get roared. Salamence is here. I'm actually going to switch to Skarmory because I don't want to get Toxic. And then I'm going to not roar. So this is not a speed tie. What I realized by roaring myself and having that faster roar, I think that my Skarmory is faster than his. So what I'm actually doing is going for Toxic with my Skarmory, because he catches every switch in, and he'll roar, and I'll switch into something. If it's Milotic or Celebi, I can just recover, and like Toxic is whatever. Milotic can just refresh it. Celebi is just gonna shed the Toxic when it switches. If I end up with Salamence, then nothing has happened. I'll go back to Skarmory, and he's gonna run out of moves if he stays in with his Skarmory. But he does catch my Donphan. I am able to spin here. I'm just gonna skip turns. That's great. I died a Toxic though, and I can't spin the hazards away anymore. I go to Celebi, who is probably my best at making progress against the Skarm because I can Leech Seed it. But that's not going to stop the Skarm from getting hazards up if it wants them. It does mercifully switch out as Celebi comes in. If the Celebi doesn't have Recover, we could be in a really good spot. But it does. In any case, I can go to Salamence, and I can just go for a Hidden Power Flying, which gets some decent chip on the Skarm, not enough to like really matter. But I can go to my Skarmory. They will Spike. And they will get the third layer up, and now my Donphan has basically just done nothing to help me in this endgame. And I can go for Roars. And this is me showing that I am faster than that Skarmory. I'm pretty sure that I was, but I'll have to go to Celebi to stop the Leech Seed. I will recover as Aerodactyl is the switch in. I will go to Skarmory, who takes a Rock Slide. Critical hit. That's really bad. I will have to Protect, get some HP back. But now I'm kind of screwed. I can go back to Celebi at least, who takes a Rock Slide. I will die to the next Rock Slide if I flinch. Or in fact, if it just gets a high roll. And now, yeah, the game's kind of over. See, it would have been really nice to have my Donphan for this. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be a slow and painful death. I do manage to KO the Tyranitar. I do get the +2 on the Salamence, which is really nice. I kill this. Skarmory can come in. I go for Rock Slide on a Protect. If I went for Dragon Dance, I simply would have just won if I connected the next Rock Slide. But I thought, well, I could get a high roll, I could get a crit, I could get a flinch on this particular one, and I've got enough attack now that I can finish off Swampert if it ever switches in. I will go for a DD here because it's just an obvious Protect turn, and I mean, yeah. I'll go for Hidden Power Flying, that will kill the Swampert. Skarmory comes in. My Lodic will come in. And now I'm actually not looking that bad. I could win this game because I have Toxic on my Lodic. If I can kill this Skarm before this Celebi comes in, then we're in business. I go for Recover here as Skarmory goes for Toxic. I can simply go for a Refresh. I get Roared. Salamence will come in. And it's basically going to die here. I mean, you could Protect. They actually don't go for Protect. I go for Rock Slide and I get a Flinch, which puts them back into range for Surf, which is really nice. I guess the Flinch didn't really matter that much. They could have Roared, I guess. But I don't know if that would have been better for them. And then all I have to do here simply is go for Toxic. And then I can just recover forever. And then I would win the game. Except I don't do that. I go for Surf. So not only did I choke this game by like choking out the Donphan, but I also just choked by going for Surf for no reason. Why did I go for Surf? I don't know. I can't. Can't explain it. I should have just went for Recover. Like, there's absolutely no reason to not go for Recover there. Like, it's not helping me. Like, a crit's gonna kill me if I don't recover. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, don't use Donphan like that. And also, just recover with the Milotic against the last Mon Toxic enemy. You're not doing anything else. You're not doing anything else that's going to help you out, anyway. Anything that Swords Dances or Curses or Dragon Dances or whatever, you're just going to live it just the same, if not better, going for the Recover on the next turn, so, in any case. Last game here. Hopefully we don't disgrace the good name of Donphan. What elo are we at here? 1595. Potentially shooting up into 1600 if we win this game. But I have managed to bring Donphan in versus a lead crunch Tyranitar. Could be Boa, could be Pursuit. It's not good. And then I'll Hypnosis Milotic. This has got to be a faster paced team here. Not great, but I can go to Skarmory, and if I can get some hazards down, then maybe that can help me. I do get Fire Blasted there. So could still be Boatar, could still be Pursuit. Both of them run both of those moves. I go for a Drill Peck here into the Fortress, which does a little bit of chip damage, and then I can go to Magneton. And I was hoping that I would have enough chip damage to get the range for Hidden Power Fire, but this is what not running Modest Magneton will do to you. But at the very least, this Fortress is really low. I'll go for a Drill Peck, and I don't get the roll to kill. So now 3 layers of spikes are up on my side of the field, but thankfully I can kill the Fortress, which means no Spinner, no Spiker anymore. Or there could be maybe another Spinner, or maybe a Skarmory, but that's pretty rare. I will go to Milotic against this Moltres, and I get Roared. It's not great. The Skarmory is going to stay in and protect, as they go for a Will-O-Wisp. Now, what would you do here with the Skarmory on turn 15? Milotic is a relatively decent switch. It will take a Flamethrower pretty well, but if this is a Modest Moltres and it goes for Hidden Power Grass, it 2-hit KOs my Milotic. And especially if I take the Spikes damage. It doesn't even need to be Modest. It'll just threaten to KO my Milotic, which is not good. And I need Milotic. Because there's a Tyranitar and there's a Moltres, so like that's going to be a lot better for me. And I have 1 Spike up. I'm thinking to myself, if I lose Skarmory, is it the end of the world for me? Probably not. It is the end of the world for me if I lose Milotic, though. So what I'm going to do here is stay in and Toxic. And they go for Hidden Power Grass. Or actually, I don't Toxic. I go for Spikes. Interesting. In any case, I can Protect, because that's fine by me. And then I'm looking at my calc and I'm seeing, okay, if this is Timid Moltres, I'm actually decently favored to live a Flamethrower. So I'm going to stay in and go for my 3rd layer. They actually go for another Hidden Power Grass, trying to predict the Milotic. I'll go for Protect again. They go for another Hidden Power Grass. And at this stage, it's like, well, okay, well, I'm definitely living for Flamethrower, so I might as well Toxic. Then they go, or I guess I go for Roar. I don't know why I don't go for Toxic there. In any case, that gets me out of that sticky situation, at least a little bit. I think actually, no, Roar makes a little bit of sense, because if I can get Donphan in to spin these hazards away, then Milotic is going to be a very good answer to Moltres. Whereas if I Toxic, I don't necessarily force the Moltres to switch. I just force it to click buttons. So, yeah, no, Roar makes some sense. In any case, I did get all 3 layers of spikes up versus the Moltres. Now I can go to Milotic. This Moltres will not kill me with Hidden Power Grass, so I can just recover, which is really nice, and then they're going to Roar. Fair enough. Celebi is in versus the Moltres, and I'm thinking to myself, alright, I'm faster, I can get a fast Leech Seed off at the very least. And then they Roar my Celebi out, they don't go for Flamethrower. And then Milotic is in, and this is perfect position for Milotic, since I can just go for a Toxic, and I go for it and I miss. Would have been nice to hit on the Blissey, would force the Blissey to switch out eventually, but I can go to Skarmory and kind of force the same issue if I so choose. But the Blissey is going to Calm Mind, and Thunderbolt is going to do a lot, and I can't let this Blissey just keep Calm Minding on me. So I'm going to just simply go for a Roar. Flygon is in. It's going to KO me with Rock Slide, but that's okay, because I know that this Donphan can't beat stop my Donphan, or sorry, this Flygon can't stop my Donphan from spinning, and that is all I needed. Yeah, I get Toxic, but whatever, who cares? Also, like, they go for Earthquake and do 20%, and I get my Toxic off on the Flygon. This is part of the reason why I like sub Flygon a lot, because it's really good at stopping a Pokemon like Donphan from getting extra value on you. Yeah, it is already going to spin, but if you can Toxic the Donphan and then get behind a substitute, well, then you're just getting leftovers. The Donphan can't break your sub, can't Toxic you, like you're fine. And I think that, honestly, this team maybe could look to use a substitute Flygon. Although I could see the argument that, like, it's really nice to see what a choice banded Aerodactyl is locking into, because, like, Flygon being your only rock resist means that sometimes these CB rock types can be a problem. If they catch a Flygon with 1 or 2 good moves, then all of a sudden you don't have a rock resist anymore. So, fair enough. But because it is that said, I am able to get a Toxic off. I do get an HP Rock into the Milotic, which I don't know how impactful that is, really. It is going to force it to recover, but since, I mean, I can't really do anything to the Milotic anyway, I could Toxic, and it might not have Refresh because it has Hypnosis, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't. So I can just go to Celebi. Celebi is perfectly fine against Hypnosis Milo because I'm faster, I can get my Leech Seed off, and if it gets the Hypnosis on me, whatever, I just go back and sack Donphan. In any case, I can go for Psychic. I get a special defense drop on the Moltres. And I'm going to stay in and just click it again because I am faster than Moltres because I have a very weird Celebi. And unfortunately, they do switch to Tyranitar, so they call me out on that. But I will go for HP Grass because I know that I should live a Crunch. They actually go for Pursuit, which is just the cherry on the cake there. But this Moltres comes in. I have a roll to kill it with Psychic. I don't get the roll, but they go for a Hidden Power Grass. And now I'm just thinking, what is this? What are you doing? And then they forfeit. And that's how I got to 1600. Yeah. So I don't know why my opponent became allergic to clicking Flamethrower there. And especially on that last turn, to me it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to predict Milotic switch. It's like, alright, great, you predict the Milotic switch. If you don't crit, Milotic is just going to recover stall out. And if I ever am like, you know, I don't want to risk that, I have a whole Donphan to sack there. And then, yeah. Like, my best play was to go for the roll and try to kill that Moltres with Psychic, I think. And then, hopefully, because of the 3 layers of spikes and the Blissey not being at full health, Salamence can find a way to win this game. Honestly, it's not overly likely, and if they killed my Celebi, they would have been in a great position to just win. But they made so many wrong plays with the Moltres, and I'm not saying that they predicted wrong. I think they were just wrong. Like, why go for Will-O-Wisp? Like, why go for Will-O-Wisp on Skarm? Like, yes, maybe if my Unreveal to say, like, Tyranitar, that seems pretty feasible with this kind of team. Or the Salamence that it was. Like, it would have been nice to hit that, but why would I ever go to them? Like, I don't know. I guess maybe they thought, like, I was super cooked by the Moltres. And Milotic was my only answer, and if they could ever eliminate the Milotic, they just win. Which, yeah, this is all probably true and very reasonable to think. But, like, to not Flamethrower the Celebi ever, I just do not understand that play. So, yeah, I don't know. Listen, sometimes you make predictions and they're right, and sometimes you make predictions and they're wrong. And I don't know. I just got a lot of good predictions, I guess. But I don't know. I think a flamethrower mid-ground, like even if the Milotic comes in, all right, whatever. You have your own Milotic. You could probably put it to sleep. And that would be really good. You have Blissey, who can just Calm Mind spam versus the Milotic, or just T-Bolt into it for some damage, whatever. Like, I guess it's kind of difficult because of the spikes on the field, but you only let so many spikes get on the field because you refuse to flamethrower the Skarmory. Like, in any case. Yeah, that was the Donphan video. Before I get too deep in the weeds on this Moltres. But yeah, I think that you should give this a try. I think another option for you, if you would like, is Rock Slide over HP Rock and HP Ghost over Toxic. I wouldn't recommend Rest on this team. I think that Rest just does not match the pace at all. And Rest, honestly, is really hard to do on Donphan, period. Unless you have like an Aromatherapy or Heal Bell user. I could have had a Heal Bell Celebi maybe for that, but I don't know. I'd rather have the 2 coverage moves on this sort of Celebi for this sort of team. But yeah, I do recommend that. If you're somebody who's a fan of Jimothy Cool or Jimothy Gaming, you may have seen that I ran into him on the ladder using a Donphan team. Yes, it was very similar to this one. I think I had Snorlax instead of Celebi, and then I had a different lead, maybe Skarmory, I'm not sure. I was testing out that version of the team as well, but I sort of was reminded something in that Jimothy Cool game, in fact, is that Snorlax fucking sucks. So I switched to Celebi instead. So that's kind of it. And yeah, I acknowledge it. I'm not going to do a gym, as much as I would love to do a gym personation. He already showed the game and he won, and like you can get that experience from watching his video. So but needless to say, the next time we get into a stall versus stall and Jim doesn't want to post that on his channel, win or lose, we're going to get a Jim personation. So keep that in mind, I guess, for later. In any case, this has been Donphan, underrated Pokemon. Love this guy. Use more Donphan on the ladder.